this, I can educate myself, I can evolve in this, I can do something, then it's a great potential instead of a threat between non-photographers and photographers. And what arena do you think you can try to elaborate those new
categories?
categories?
You mentioned, like in literature, we have fiction and non-fiction. Do we need more categories?
No, just quickly. Let's go back to pizza and then I'll go to categories. If I go to McDonald's, I had lunch. If I go home and I cook for 3 hours, invite 6 friends for lunch, I had lunch. If I use Instagram, it's photography. If I do what Tomasz does, it's photography, right? We don't differentiate. But now we're starting, one is fast food, one is slow food. That's one idea. Four Corners, for example, is slow photography. It's slowing us down. Don't make 10,000 images, make an important image and put the 4 corners. If you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to. So it's slow photography. So I think, what you said before about Virilio and, different philosophies of speed. Speed is a major, major component. That's why when I answer your questions on purpose, I take a long time even though I shouldn't, because I don't believe in speed. I really believe in the silence between the words and the silence between the sentences and so on and so forth as part of a conversation. I'm not an ATM machine in that sense, on purpose. I would suggest we go to the photo book store, downstairs, and we label them fiction and nonfiction for fun. We just try it. This is the fiction section, this is the nonfiction sentence. And then we see where we get to. We used to do this at the color section, black and white, that's too easy. But we can do it in different ways. We could do it, this is, to use, somebody said before, intentionality, or Tomasz said, intentionality. This is the intentional photography section, and this is the unintentional photography section. Snapshots are, in a sense, unintentional photographs, right? They're snapshots. There's a lot of ways to use it, but what's extraordinary in photography, unlike cinema, novel, painting, and so on, is the lack of intellectual discourse. There's almost none in terms of the questions you're asking. But there's a lot in cinema. Look at the Danish movement, this movement, that movement, and so on. The new wave. What's a new wave in photography? We don't even have an old wave. So where are we? We're just reactive people, hold cameras, and we're in the right place at the right time. That's idiotic. We're much more than that. And I think what, to take it on, what you're saying, is it would be wonderful to come up with dozens of new terms, try them out, and see where they bring us. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not stuck in the back. Robert Capa could win the World Press Photo Award today. There's no other field where somebody from the 1930s could win in film. Could you imagine Hitchcock winning today? It's impossible. Could you imagine a 1930s novelist winning today? It's impossible. Or a painter? It's impossible. But in photography we can. So why have we not progressed? There's an emergency that we do progress because the world needs us to progress. We have no choice. We have to progress. So we have to take these experiments. We have to try this. And the worst thing is we could be wrong and we try something else. But at least we try it. And that's what supposedly this media revolution is about, but it's not about that. It's again, Orwell, war is peace, peace is war. I often find the best way to figure out what something is to use the opposite. The media non-revolution. In many ways we've regressed, but we think we moved ahead. But we should move ahead.
But the question is how to move ahead and how to progress. And,
Well, I think the answer is the discussion we're having right now.
Right.
This is how we're moving ahead, progressing. And you asked me the question before about the Gideon Mendel pictures. Just to clarify, because it wasn't clear, remember the woman who had HIV in South Africa, and in 4 years she got better? The point was that he decided to look at a pilot program for 4 years, and as she got better, the UNAIDS was able to use that to show that Africans do take the medicine, and 8 million people were then on treatment. By doing it proactively, they were able to convince people that this would work, and 8 million people take the treatment. Instead of waiting for the people to get sick and die and take these, don't Africans look incredible when they die of AIDS, kind of thing. I'm being sardonic, excuse me.
Okay, where's the microphone? Anybody interested?
I have a question to Tomasz regarding the Russian Federal Archive. This might be very basic or way too complex question for this conversation, but as I was going through the exhibition, I was wondering, why did the people who photographed those people right before they died go through this and acribically collect data? Because, and this might relate to every other genocide in history, because we've known this from other internment camps or concentration camps. Someone said metadata earlier in the digital age, and the way they were recording names, birthdays, execution dates, addresses, and everything, it kind of, that was the connection I made to the metadata in the digital age. And why did they do this? What were they doing with these pictures? I mean, they obviously weren't aware of what kind of mass crime they were committing, but there has to be a reason. Isn't it?
Tomasz?
First of all, it was just policy routine. They have instructions even before the terror. So the person has to be photographed according to Alphonse Bertillon identification rule of fast profile, beginning from 19th century when it was invented. The negative has to be described by name, and that people will not confusion. And all the other data which was presented is short biograph. There are extracts from the dossier, interrogation dossier of the prisoner, which was done regularly. Of course, it's a question what for to photograph. Usually, this kind of photography, identification, criminal photography, is to recognize this person after. So what for to photograph person who is going to be killed tonight or after tomorrow? But this is one answer is that the totalitarian systems, they have their inner logic, which is quite might be quite different from our normal logic. And in this case, it was just a routine. And perhaps the officers in the prison who were following these procedures and instructions, they might be also afraid from themselves, not because it was really terror, also for them, not to make any mistakes, not to be accused to be an enemy of the people. So this is one of the possible answers for this, why they were photographing.
Are there any traces?
And maybe one more thing that I want to mention. I found a few documents which are telling that at least in Moscow, and I know also one other place north of Russia, these images were used by firing squads, the executioners, just before the execution, to confirm for sure the identity of the victim, which is going to be shot. This was discovered by Russian researcher Lydia Alexeyevna Golovkova, who found a document from Butovo killing fields on the outskirts of Moscow, where she found a document that they stopped execution of one person because photograph was missing. So they wait one day more, the photograph was brought from the prison, and they killed this person another day.
And just to add, when I showed you Cesar, remember the Syrian 11,000 people killed? He was a military policeman. He had to photograph for two reasons. One, to convince the Assad government that the people were dead, that they did what they were supposed to do and killed them. And the other, to show their families so the families did not have to see the body, because then they'd realize it was torture. What it was written on the death certificate in all cases that I'm aware of is they died of heart disease or lung failure. And these are almost all men in their 20s. So they didn't have to show the body to the family. It was obvious, that there were other reasons they died. They were tortured and killed. And this was, the photograph was used in that incredibly destructive way.
What I can mention also add in this what you said, working on the archive, and I had a touch contact with this small thin photographs. It's inevitable. You can't avoid, the reflection that this item, this 6 to 9 centimeters, very thin photograph, was present in the moment when this person pictured on it was killed. This is something very, I don't know how to name it, a spiritual experience that link between this image and the person on it.
Okay, any more comments, reflections? Do you have a microphone?
Just one question. This is clearly a question to Mr. Tomasz Kizny. I was born in the 80s in Poland, and as a kid, I don't remember the regime as a really bad thing, because purely because of the experiences and protective parents, you know, things like that. And basically, my question is, because recently I started researching on the Cold War, the martial law, and that part of the history, and pretty much whatever happened, like from the beginning of the 80s until the communism fall in 1989. And I realized that every single person, like older person older than me, like my grandma, my mom, every single person I was asking questions about it, they really didn't want to share anything. So basically what happened, I had the feeling that they want to forget about it. And my question is, how can we convince people like victims, because like all of us in Poland, for example, all of us were victims of the system. How can we convince people to actually speak and share their stories? Because I have a feeling that whatever happened, people don't really want to speak about it. And for example, in the future, my grandkids or great-grandkids, they may not have a chance to discover that important part of the history.
Okay, Tomasz.
Well, look, you mean that if your grandparents didn't want to talk about commitants because they were too traumatized to come back to this?
Yes.
Well, it is well-known phenomena, of course, for people who really had an experience of strong trauma. Well, it's hard to answer for me, do you? There are oral history projects, and now even popular second generation oral history project to bring this knowledge to the public. I think that today, coming back again to the mainstream of our discussion today, is on one hand, there are many factors which are limiting our possibility to, in public opinion, to comprehend the past, to prevent kind of repetition of these bad things in the future. And Poland today, what I try to express, is the very good example, and it's a, for me, painful experience. We win in 1989. It was possible. We win. No one believed. For these 8 years on the underground, no one of us believed that one day we will win. But thanks to changes in the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, suddenly we win. And what happened 25 years later is coming to the power people who are lying, who are soon they will start to repress also. They are bringing some crazy ideology, they are destroying culture, they are destroying economics, and so on. Dictator is coming back. That's, I don't know how to prevent. I think the key thing is education. Education. And people will not vote for Trump, and they will not vote for Kaczynski, or Marie Le Pen, or Alternative for Deutschland in Germany. Perhaps education. And of course mass media. But mass media, I don't know how to cure mass media. I was working for about more than 10 years in the main daily in Poland as a photo reporter and also journalist. And I saw from inside these changes which were going on 90s and beginning of 2000. It was commercialization and fighting for the readers, fighting with new medias, and well, it's no way, because I was very much, with Dominique, Gazeta Wyborcza, we were very much attached to this project because it was the first daily, independent daily in Poland, created in 1989. But we understood also, we are very critical to this, what's going to happen when they go to stock exchange, the company, But we also understood that they can't go other way if they want to survive on the market of media.
So education and memory, where we started out this morning, the importance of memory, and where photography evidently still does play a big role and really can do something. And that's probably the answers then. Because what we see happening in Poland, we see it happening in the United States, we see it happening all over Europe. And sometimes it's just lack of memory. People don't remember or they don't want to remember. We need to stop here, and those of you who want to continue, if you want to, you can just remain here and keep the discussion alive. But I would like to thank you very much for coming. I'd like to thank Richtin and Tomasz Kizny and Dominique very much. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
One quick thing. Confusion can be a good thing. It's confusing what's going on. Lots of things are going on, but it's also an advantage that one can take advantage of. It's not a rigid system at this point. There's lots of entry points. There's lots of things that can be done both locally, nationally, internationally, personally, in all kinds of ways. So it's really an opening. So what I try to do, really, just to be clear, because I'm still suffering from the dark vision, is to deconstruct to reconstruct. How does media work? Deconstruct it. The bad stuff, get rid of it. The good stuff, use it. And where can you go further with it? All of us have the potential to do that because we all have systems, cell phones and so on. We can make work, we can do stuff with it and influence lots of other people by doing it. You know, by seeing Tomas's work today, it influenced me. It's changed me in the way I look at stuff. So what I'm trying really to say is it's an open system. The Four Corners is open source. It's not closed, it's open. And the idea is for people to participate and move forward. But in that sense, it's really, there's not a single author. It is a joint authorship, it's a collaboration and a big way to move forward. So what I really do mean is to try to be, my life is really dedicated to all the potentials to do things differently in good ways, is what I try to do. So to me, these are just lots of potentials for positive stuff to happen. But first, you also have to recognize what is happening, and then where do we go further, and what can be used and not used, and so on and so forth. So I really do mean it in that sense. I don't come around trying to spread pessimism at all, or cynicism. I'm not at all cynical. I'm really just trying to say that, this is a moment in the world history which never happened before, in which we can all participate and come up with some interesting ideas. So that's really what I want to say.
Thank you very much. As I said, those of you who want to come further, come closer, and have any more questions or comments, please do.
Where is your exhibition next?
Photographic Center and